queen. The throne room was imposing, with its majestic pillars and lavish ornamentation. Golden stand lamps burned in a long double row on either side of the room, breaking only for the pillars. Guardsmen in white and red stood in front of them, burnished breastplates gleaming. The marble columns were matched by the thick crimson rug, woven with the line of Andor in gold at its center. It led toward Elaine, wearing the rose crown. Her gown was after a traditional fashion, rather than those favored in court right now. The sleeves were wide, with the cuffs designed to droop down to a gold-embroidered point beneath her hand. That pattern was echoed by the bodice, which was high enough to be modest, but low enough to remind all that Elaine was a woman, one still unmarried. Her mother had married a man from Cairn early in her reign. Others might wonder if Elaine would do the same to cement her hold there. Another distant boom sounded. The noise of the dragons firing was growing familiar. Not quite a clap of thunder, lower, more regular. Elaine had been taught to conceal her nervousness, first by her tutors, and then by the Aes Sedai. Whatever some people thought, Elaine Trakand could control her temper when she needed to. She kept her hands in her lap and forced her tongue to be still. Showing nervousness would be far worse than anger. Dialin sat in a chair near the throne. The stately woman wore her golden hair unbound around her shoulders, and she was working quietly at a hoop of embroidery. Dialin said it relaxed her, providing something for the hands to do while the mind was busy. Elaine's mother was not in attendance. Today she might be too much of a distraction. Elaine couldn't afford herself Diolin's same luxury. She needed to be seen leading. Unfortunately, leading often took the form of sitting on her throne, eyes forward, projecting determination and control while she waited. Surely the demonstration was done by now? Another boom. Perhaps not. She could hear soft chat in the sitting chamber to the side of the throne room. Those high seats, still in Camelin, had received a royal invitation to meet with the Queen in a discussion of sanitation requirements for those staying outside the city. That meeting would happen at the strike of 5, but the invitations had hinted the high seats were to arrive 2 hours early. The wording of the message should have been obvious. Elaine was going to do something important today, and she was inviting the high seats early so that they could enjoy some sanctioned eavesdropping. They were kept well supplied with drinks and small dishes of meats and fruits in the sitting room. Likely the chat she overheard was speculation about what she was going to reveal. If they only knew. Elaine kept her hands in her lap. Dialin continued her needlework, flicking her tongue to herself as she pulled out a wrong stitch. After a nearly insufferable wait, the dragons stopped sounding, and Elaine felt Birgitta returning to the palace. Sending her with the group was the best way to know when it was returning. The timing today needed to be handled with absolute care. Elaine breathed in and out to still her nerves. There. Birgitta was surely in the palace now. Elaine nodded to Captain Gaibon. It was time to bring in the prisoners. A group of guards entered a moment later, leading 3 individuals. Sniffling Aramilla was still plump, despite her captivity. The older woman was pretty, or might have been, had she been wearing more than rags. Her large brown eyes were wide with fright, as if she thought Elaine might still execute her. Elenia was far more in control. She, like the others, had been stripped of her fine dress and wore a tattered gown instead, but she had cleaned her face and dressed her gold hair in a neat bun. Elaine didn't starve or abuse her prisoners. Her enemies though they weren't traitors to Andor. Elenia regarded Elaine. That vulpine face of hers was thoughtful, calculating. Did she know where her husband's army had vanished to? That force felt like a hidden knife pressed to Elaine's back. None of her scouts had been able to discover its location. Light. Problems atop problems. The third woman was Nayan Rowan, a slim, pale woman whose black hair had lost much of its luster during her captivity. This one had seemed broken before Elaine had taken her captive, and she kept back from the other two women. The three were prodded to the foot of the throne's dais, then forced down on their knees. In the hallway, the Kyrianan nobles were returning noisily from the demonstration of the dragons. They would assume that they'd happened upon Elaine's display by accident. The crown acknowledges Nayan Aron, Elenia Sarand, and Aramilla Marn, Elaine said in a loud voice. That stilled the outside conversations, both those of the Andoran nobles in the sitting room and the Kyrianan outside in the hallway. Of the three, only Elenia dared glance up. Elaine met the gaze with one as hard as stone, and the woman blushed before looking down again. Dialin had put away her needlework and was watching closely. The crown has given much thought to you three, Elaine pronounced. Your misguided war against Trakand has left you destitute, and requests for ransom have been turned away by your heirs and scions. Your own houses have abandoned you. Her words rang in the grand throne room. The women before her bowed down further. This leaves the crown with a conundrum, Elaine said. You vex us with your troubling existences. Perhaps some queens would have left you to prison, but I find that reeks of indecision. You would drain my resources and make men whisper of ways to free you. The hall fell silent, save for the husky breathing of the prisoners. This crown is not prone to indecisiveness, Elaine pronounced. On this day,
Hey, Fire, how you doing?
Marn and Aron are stripped of title and estate. Their lands forfeit to the crown in retribution for their crimes.
Gotta get my little table set up real quick.
Elaine gasped, looking up. Aramilla groaned, slouching down on the lion-centered rug. Nayan did not respond. She seemed numb. Murmuring rose immediately from the sitting room. This was worse than an execution. When nobles were executed, they were at least executed with their titles. In a way, an execution was an acknowledgement of a worthy foe.
About to roll up
the title and lands
second
passed
one.
on to the heir, and the house survived. But this was something few queens would ever attempt. If Elaine were seen as seizing land and money for the throne, the other nobles would unite against her. She could guess the conversation.
I had another one rolled up, but I don't know where I put it.
Her power base was shaky. Her allies, who had stood with her before the siege and faced the possibility of execution themselves, might very well now begin to question. Best to move on quickly. Elaine gestured, and the guards pulled the three prisoners to their feet, and then led them to the side of the room. Even defiant Elenia seemed stunned. In essence, this proclamation was a proclamation of death. As soon as given leave, they would commit suicide rather than face their houses. Birgitta knew her cue. She entered, leading a group of Kyrian.
Yeah, that's nobles. What I'm doing is rolling
They'd
one
been
up.
Invited to a display of Andor's new weapon for defending against the shadow, and were a mixed band.
I got one rolled up. I just got to roll up another one.
Was probably either Bertome Saigon
Let me see if I can get
Eastman.
Snoopy and
Bertome was a short man
camera.
with a kind of handsomeness, though Elaine was not fond of the way the Kyrianan shaved and powdered their foreheads. He wore a large knife at his belt.
Ozzy.
Swords had been forbidden in the Queen's presence. And
There's Ozzy has a little bed.
Treatment of the prisoners, as well he should have been. His cousin, Kola Vare, had received a similar punishment from Rand, though that had not affected her entire house. She'd hanged herself rather than face the shame. Her death had elevated Bertome, and while he'd been very careful not to make public waves against Rand's rule, Elaine's sources picked him out as one of the major private critics of Rand in Kyrian. Lorstrom Eastman was a quiet, thin man who walked with his hands behind his back and tended to look down his nose. Like the others in the group, he wore dark clothing after the Kyrianan fashion, his coat striped with the colors of his house. He had risen to prominence following Rand's disappearance from Kyrian. Desperate times make for quick advances, and this man had not moved against Rand too quickly, yet also hadn't allied with him. That middle ground gave him power, and some whispered that he was considering seizing the throne. Other than those two, the Kyrianan here were a smattering of other nobility. Ailill Rioton was not the head of her house, but since the disappearance of her brother, a disappearance that was looking more and more like death, she had assumed power. Rioton was a powerful house, and the slim, middle-aged woman was tall for a Kyrianan and wore a dark blue dress slashed with colors, her dress shaped by hoops through the skirts. Her family had held the Sun Throne recently, if only for a relatively short time, and she was known to be a vocal supporter of Elaine. Lord and Lady Osielen, Lord and Lady Chuliandres, Lord and Lady Hamarashla, and Lord Mavabwin made a cluster behind those of more importance. All were of middling power, and all, for one reason or another, were likely roadblocks to Elaine. They were a cluster of carefully done hair and powdered foreheads, wide dresses on the women, and coats and trousers on the men, lace at the cuffs. My lords and ladies, Elaine said, naming each house in turn, you have enjoyed Andor's demonstration? Indeed we have, your majesty, lanky Lorstrom said, bowing his head graciously. Those weapons are quite intriguing. He was obviously digging for information. Elaine blessed her tutors for their insistence that she understand the game of houses. We all know that the last battle quickly approaches, Elaine said. I thought that Kyrian should best be apprised of the strength of its greatest and closest ally. There will be times in the near future when we will need to rely upon one another. Indeed, your majesty, Lorstrom said. Your majesty, Bertone said, stepping forward. The short man folded his arms. I assure you, Kyrian exults in Andor's strength and stability. Elaine eyed him. Was he offering her support? No, it seemed he was also digging, wondering if Elaine would declare herself a candidate for the Sun Throne. Her intentions should have been obvious by now. Sending some of the band to the city had been an obvious move, nearly too obvious for the supple Kyrianan. Would that Kyrian had similar stability, Elaine said carefully. Several of them nodded, no doubt hoping she intended to offer one of them the throne. If she threw Andor's support behind one of these, it would guarantee him or her victory, and it would give her a sympathizer as king or queen. Another might have made that ploy. Not her. That throne would be hers. The taking of a throne is a very delicate business, Lorstrom said. It has proven dangerous in the past, and so many are hesitant. Indeed, Elaine said. I do not envy Kyrian the uncertainty that it has known these last months. And now, the moment. Elaine took a deep breath. Faced with the strength in Andor, one might think this would be an obvious time to have strong alliances. In fact, the throne recently acquired several estates of no small means. It occurs to me that these estates have no stewards. All grew quiet. The whispers in the other rooms stopped. Had they heard correctly? Had Elaine offered estates in Andor to foreign nobility? She hid her smile. Slowly, some of them got it. Lorstrom gave a sly smile, and he nodded to her, ever so slightly. Kyrian and Andor have long shared fellowship, Elaine continued, as if the idea were only now occurring to her. Our lords have married your ladies, our ladies your lords, and we share many common bonds of blood and affection. I should think the wisdom of a few Kyrianan lords would be a great addition to my court. and perhaps educate me upon my heritage on my father's side. She locked eyes with Lorstrom. Would he bite? His lands in Kyrian were
Hey,
small,
D-Man, how you
and his
doing, bro?
influence great for a time, but that could tip.
Hope you're doing
The
well.
estates she'd seized from the three
Did you
prisoners
see
were among the most
the short
enviable
I
in her
put up that I
country.
finally
He had to see.
finished that one that was
If she took the throne of
110
Kyrian by
centimeters?
force, the people and the nobility would rebel against her. That was partially Lorstrom's fault, if her suspicions were true.
Oh,
But what
damn,
if
that
she
sucks,
gave lands
D-Man.
within Andor to some of the Kyrianan nobility? What if she created multiple bonds between their countries? What if she
Yeah, but that
proved that
took
she
me
would not
too
steal
long to
their
finish that
titles,
one.
but would instead be willing to give
Killed a
some of
light
them greater
table and all
royalty?
doing it.
Would that be enough to prove that she didn't intend to steal the lands of the Kyrian nobility
Yeah, that
and give
sucks,
them to her
D-Man, them
own
getting rid
people?
of all that.
Would that ease their worries? Lorstrom met her eyes. I see great potential for alliances. Bertome was nodding in appreciation. I too think this could be arranged. Neither would give up their lands, of course. They simply planned to gain estates in Andor, wealthy ones. The others shared glances. Lady Osielin and Lord Mababwin were the first two to figure it out. They spoke at the same time, offering alliances. Elaine stilled her anxious heart, sitting back in the throne. I have but one more estate to give, she said, but I believe it could be divided. She would give some to Aileo also, to curry favor and reward her support. Now for the second part of the ploy. Lady Sarand, Elaine called toward the back of the room. Elenia stepped forward, wearing her rags. The crown is not without mercy, Elaine said. Andor cannot forgive you for the pain and suffering you caused, but other countries have no such memories. Tell me, if the crown were to provide you with an opportunity for new lands, would that opportunity be taken? New lands, Your Majesty? Elenia asked. Of which lands do you speak? A unification between Andor and Kyrian would offer many opportunities, Elaine said. Perhaps you have heard of the Crown's alliance with Gildon. Perhaps you have heard of the newly revitalized lands in the west of the realm. This is a time of great opportunity. If I were to find you and your husband a place to form a new seat in Kyrian, would you take what is given? I would certainly consider it, Your Majesty, Elenia said, showing a glimmer of hope. Elaine turned to the Kyrianan lords. For any of this to take effect, she said, I would need authority to speak for both Andor and Kyrian. How long do you suspect might it take for such a situation to be arranged? Return me to my homeland through one of those strange portals, Lorstrom said, and give me 1 hour. I need only half an hour, Your Majesty, Bertome put in, glancing at Lorstrom. 1 hour, Elaine said, holding up her hands. Prepare well. All right, Birgitta said as the door to the smaller chamber closed. What in the name of the Dark One's bloody left hand just happened? Elaine sat down. It had worked, or it seemed as if it would. The plush chair was a comfort after the stiffness of the lion throne. Dylan took a seat to her right. Morghese sat to her left. What happened, Morghese said, is that my daughter is brilliant. Elaine smiled in gratitude. Birgitta, however, frowned. Elaine could feel the woman's confusion. She was the only one in the room with them. They had to wait 1 hour to see the true results of Elaine's plotting. All right, Birgitta said. So you gave up a bunch of Andor's land to Kyrianan nobility? As a bribe, Dylan said. She didn't seem as convinced as Morghese. A clever maneuver, Your Majesty, but dangerous. Dangerous, Birgitta said.
two
Blood and
roach
ashes, will
ones
someone
and
please
one
explain to
regular
the
one.
idiot over here why bribery is brilliant or clever? It's hardly Elaine who discovered it. This was more than a gift, Morgaze
No
said.
time for a nap.
Incongruously, she took to pouring tea for those in the room. Elaine couldn't ever recall seeing her mother pour tea before. The major obstacle blocking Elaine from Kyrian was that she would be viewed as a conqueror. Yes, so? Birgitta asked.
Hell yeah.
So she made
I got two
between
rolled
the
up
two
and I got a
nations,
backup one.
Dylan said,
But
accepting a cup of Tremalking Black from Morgaze.
I'm here dropping stuff.
By giving that group some land in Andor, she shows that she's not going to ignore or impoverish the Kyrian nobility. Beyond that, Morgaze said, she makes herself less of an oddity. If she'd taken the throne, she'd have gained its lands and become the only person to have holdings in both countries. Now she'll be one of many. But it's dangerous, Dylan repeated.
Hell yeah,
Nordstrom
fire.
didn't give in because of the bribe. He didn't? Birgit
I know,
said, frowning.
on my PS5 I got
Elaine said, sipping her tea.
see, Assassin's
He gave
Creed
in
3
because he saw that I
remastered,
was handing him the chance for both
Assassin's
thrones.
Creed Syndicate,
The room fell silent.
Assassin's Creed Black
Bloody
Flag,
ashes, Birgitta finally swore.
Assassin's
Dylan
Creed
nodded.
Origins,
You have created enemies who
Odyssey,
could overthrow you, Elaine. If
Valhalla,
something were to happen to you, there is a good chance that either
and I
Lordstrom
think
or
that's it.
Bertone could make a play for both countries. I'm counting on it, Elaine said. They're the two most powerful noblemen in Kyrian right now,
Hell yeah.
particularly since Dobrain hasn't returned from wherever Rand took him. With
I'll be
them
right
actively
back,
supporting
and
the
then we'll do a
idea
dab.
of a common monarch, we actually have a chance at this. They'll only be supporting you because they see a chance of taking both thrones for themselves, Dylan said. Better to choose your enemies than remain in ignorance, Elaine said. I've essentially limited my competition. They saw the dragons, and those made them envious. Then I offered them the chance not only to gain access to those weapons, but to double their wealth. And on top of that, I gave them the seed of possibility that one day they might be named king. So they'll try to kill you, Birgitta said flatly. Perhaps, Elaine said. Or perhaps they'll try to undermine me, but not for many years. A decade, I'd guess. To strike now would be to risk the nations dividing again. No, first they'll establish themselves and enjoy their wealth. Only once they're certain that things are secure and that I've grown lax will they move. Fortunately, there are two of them, and that will let me play them against one another. And for now, we have gained two staunch allies, men who keenly want my bid for the Sun Throne to succeed. They will hand the crown right to me. And the prisoners? Dylan said. Elenia and the other two? Do you really intend to find them lands? Yes, Elaine said. What I've done for them is actually very kind. The crown will assume their debts, then give them a fresh start in Kyrian, if this all works. It will be good to have Andoran nobility taking lands there, though I will probably have to give them lands out of my own Kyrian and holdings. You'll leave yourself surrounded by enemies, Birgitta said, shaking her head. As usual, Elaine said. Fortunately, I have you to watch over me, don't I? She smiled at the warder, but knew that Birgitta could sense her nervousness. This was going to be a long hour's wait. Chapter 51. A Testing. The hair on Min's neck rose as she held the crystal sword. Kalandor. She'd heard stories of this weapon since she was a child. Wild tales of distant Tyr and the strange sword that is not a sword. Now she held it in her own fingers. It was lighter than she'd expected. Its crystalline length caught and played with the lamplight. It seemed to shimmer too much, the light inside changing even when she didn't move. The crystal was smooth but warm.
Same with what I got. I've been taking my time with it, even though it is
They were in their rooms
4
inside the
grams.
Stone of
I'm
Tyr,
still taking my
accompanied
time.
by Kedswain, Narishma, Maurice, Naif, and 2 maidens. Rand reached out, touching the weapon. She glanced at him, and a viewing sprang to life above him. A glowing sword, Kalendor, being gripped in a black hand. She gasped. What did you see? Rand asked softly. Kalendor, held in a fist. The hand looks to be made of onyx. Any idea what it means? She shook her head. We should hide it away again, Kedswain said. She wore brown and green today, earthy colors
Using a
lightened
little
by her
light on
golden
it.
hair ornaments. She stood with arms folded, back straight. Aw, getting the object out now is foolhardy, boy. Your objection is noted, Rand said. He took the sa'angreal from Min, then slid it over his shoulder into a sheath on his back. At his side, he once again wore the ancient sword with the red and gold dragons painted on the sheath. He'd said before that he considered that to be a kind of symbol. It represented the past to him, and Kalendor somehow represented the future.
Now,
Rand, Min said,
I
taking
gotta
his
charge
arm.
up my
My research.
little dab knife.
Remember, Kalendor seems to have a deeper flaw than we've discovered. This viewing only reinforces what I said before. I worry the sword will be used against you. I suspect that it will, Rand said. Everything else in this world has been used against me. Narishma, a gateway, please. We've kept the Borderlanders waiting long enough. The Ashaman nodded, bells in his hair tinkling. Rand turned to Naif. Naif, has there still been no word from the Black Tower? No, my lord, the tall Ashaman said. I have been unable to travel there, Rand said. That implies great trouble, worse than I had feared. Use this weave. It can disguise you. Travel to a place a day's ride away and ride in, hiding yourself. See what you can discover. Help if you can. When you find Logain and those loyal to him, deliver him a message for me. What message, my lord? Rand looked distant. Tell them that I was wrong. Tell them that we're not weapons. We're men. Perhaps
Before I
it will
do a
help.
dab, let's get a little
Take
drink.
care. This could be dangerous. Bring me word. I will need to fix things there, but I could easily stumble into a trap more dangerous than any I've avoided so far. Problems. So many problems that need fixing, and only one of me. Go in my place, Nate, for now. I need information. Yes, my lord. He seemed confused, but he ducked out of the room to obey. Rand took a deep breath, then rubbed the stump of his left arm. Let's go. Are you certain you don't want to bring more people? Min asked.
There you go.
Yes, Rand said. Kedswain, be ready to open a gateway and get us out if needed. We're going into formatting, boy, Kedswain said. Surely you haven't forgotten that we are prevented from touching the source while there. Rand smiled. And you're wearing a full paralysis net in your hair, which includes a well. I'm certain you keep it full, and that should be enough to create a single gateway. Kedswain's face grew expressionless. I've never heard of a paralysis net. Kedswain, said I. Rand said softly. Your net has a few ornaments I don't recognize. I suspect it is a breaking era creation. But I was there when the first ones were designed, and I wore the original male version. The room fell still. Well, boy, Kedswain finally said, you aren't ever going to give up that affectation, Kedswain Sedai? Rand asked. Calling me boy? I no longer mind, though it does feel odd. I was 400 years old on the day I died during the Age of Legend. I suspect that would make you my junior by several decades at the least. I show you respect. Perhaps it would be appropriate for you to return it. If you wish, you may call me Rand Sedai. I am, so far as I know, the only male Aes Sedai still alive who was properly raised, but who never turned to the shadow. Cadswain paled visibly. Rand's smile turned kindly. You wish to come in and dance with the Dragon Reborn, Cadswain. I am what I need to be. Be comforted. You face the Forsaken, but have one as ancient as they at your side. He turned away from her, eyes growing distant. Now, if only great age really were an indication of great wisdom, as easy to wish that the Dark One would simply let us be. He took Min by the arm, and together they walked through Narishma's gateway. Beyond, a small group of maidens waited inside a wooded clearing, guarding a group of horses. Min climbed into her saddle, noting how reserved Cadswain looked, as well she should. When Rand spoke like that, it troubled Min more than she wanted to admit. They rode out of the small city, down toward Farmadding, an impressive city set on an island in the middle of a lake. A large army flying hundreds of banners spread out around the lake. It's always been a city of importance, you know, Rand said from beside Min, his eyes distant. The Guardians are newer, but the city was here long ago. Aran Deshar, Aran Madder, Farmadding. Always a thorn in our side, Aran Deshar was. The enclave of the Encastar, those afraid of progress, afraid of wonder. Turns out they had a right to be afraid. How I wish I had listened to Gilgame. Rand, Min said softly. It drew him out of his reverie. Yes. Is it really as you said? Are you 4 centuries old? I'm nearly 4.5, I suppose. Do my years in this age add to those I had before? He looked at her. You're worried, aren't you? That I'm no longer me, the man you knew, the foolish sheep herder. You've got all of this in your mind, so much past. Memories only, Rand said. But you're him, too. You talk like you were the one who tried to seal the bore, like you knew the Forsaken personally. Rand rode in silence for a time. I suppose I am him. But Min, what you're missing is this. I may be him now, but he was always me as well. I was always him. I'm not going to change just because I remember. I was the same. I'm me, and I always have been me. Lews Theron was mad. At the end, Rand said. And yes, he made mistakes. I made mistakes. I grew arrogant, desperate. But there's a difference this time. A great one. What difference? He smiled. This time I was raised better. Min found herself smiling as well. You know me, Min. Well, I promise you, I feel more like myself now than I have in months. I feel more like myself than I ever did as Lews Theron, if that makes any kind of sense. It's because of Tom, because of the people around me. You, Perrin, Nynaeve, Matt, Avienda, Elaine, Moiraine. He tried very hard to break me. I think if I'd been the same as I was so long ago, he would have succeeded.
Nice.
They rode across the meadows surrounding
All they got
Farmadding.
is
As everywhere
the
else, the
PS5
green here had departed,
and the
leaving
Nintendo
yellow
Switch
and brown.
2.
It was getting worse and worse.
The new one they came out with.
Pretend that it slumbers.
I got that,
Min
and the only
told
reason I got
herself.
that is because I'm getting it
The land
through
isn't dead.
Aaron's.
It's waiting
Pretty
through the
much
winter. A winter of storms and
rent to
war.
own.
Narishma hissed softly, riding behind. Min glanced at him. The Ashaman's face had gone hard.
Let's do
Apparently
another
they
job.
passed inside the bubble of the Guardian's influence.
Let's see what's in there real quick.
Rand gave no indication he'd noticed. He didn't seem to be having the trouble with sickness when he channeled any longer, which relieved her. Or was he just covering it? She turned her mind to the task at hand. The Borderlander armies had never explained why they'd defied custom and logic by marching south to find Rand. They were needed desperately. Rand's intervention at Maradon had saved what was left of the city, But if that sort of thing was happening all across the border with the Blight, 20 soldiers, lances upheld with narrow blood-red banners flapping from them like streamers, intercepted Rand's group long before it reached the army. Rand stopped and let them approach. Rand Althor, one of the men announced. We are representatives of the unity of the border. We will provide escort. Rand nodded, and the procession started forward again, this time with guards. They didn't call you Lord Dragon, Min whispered to Rand. He nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps the Borderlanders did not believe he was the Dragon Reborn. Do not be arrogant here, Rand al'Thor, Cadsuane said, trotting up to ride beside him. But do not back down. Most Borderlanders will respond to strength when they see it. So, Cadsuane called Rand by name instead of naming him Boy. It seemed a victory, and it made Min smile. I will have that gateway ready, Cadsuane continued more softly, but it will be very small. The well will only give me enough to make one we'd have to crawl through. We shouldn't need it. These people will fight for you. They will want to fight for you. Only bumbling foolishness could keep them from it. There is more to it than that, Cadsuane Sedai, Rand replied. His voice something drove him. This is a challenge, one I am uncertain how to answer. But your advice is Cadsuane nodded. Eventually, men picked out a line of people waiting at the forefront of the army. There were thousands of soldiers behind, standing in rows. Saldeans with their bowed legs, Shinarans and Cockroaches, Arafellan, each soldier with 2 swords strapped to his back, and those with forked beards. The group at the head stood on the ground without mounts. They wore fine clothing. 2 women and 2 men, all with what were obviously Aes Sedai at their sides, some with an attendant or 2 behind. The one at the front is Queen Atheniella, Cadsuane whispered. She is a stern woman, but fair. She is known for meddling in the affairs of the southern nations, and I suspect the others will let her take the lead today. The handsome man beside her is King of Arafat. Handsome? Min asked, inspecting the balding, older Arafellan. It depends on one's perspective, child, Cadsuane said without missing a beat. He was once known widely for his face, and he is still known for his sword. Beside him is King Isar Togita of Shinar. So sorry, Rand said softly. Who did he lose? Min frowned. Isar didn't look particularly sad to her. Solemn, perhaps. He's a borderlander, Cadsuane said. He's fought the Trollocs all his life. I'd suspect he's lost many a person dear to him. His wife did die some years back. He's said to have the soul of a poet, but he is an austere man. If you could earn his respect, it would mean much. The last one is Tenobia, then, Rand said, rubbing his chin. Still wish I had Bashir with us. Bashir had said that his face might shield Tenobia's anger, and Rand had listened to reason on that count. Tenobia, Cadsuane said, is a wildfire. Young,
give me just a
impertinent,
second
and
before I
reckless.
like this. Gotta take a little
Don't let her
breather.
draw you into an argument. Rand nodded.
Oh yeah.
Min. Zenobia has a spear hovering over her head, Min said. Bloody, but shining in the light. Atheniella will soon be wed. I see that by white doves. She plans to do something dangerous today, so be careful. The other 2 have various swords, shields, and arrows hovering about them. Both will fight soon. In the last battle, Rand asked. I don't know, she admitted. It could be here, today. Their escort led them up to the 4 monarchs. Rand slid out of the saddle, patting Tadaishar on the neck as the horse snorted. Men moved to dismount, as did Narishma, but Rand held up a hand to stop them. Blasted fool, Cadswain muttered from beside Min, low enough that nobody else could hear. He asks me to be ready to get him out, then leaves us. He likely meant that you should get me away, Min said softly. Knowing him, he's more worried about me than himself. She paused. Blasted fool. Cadswain shot her a glance, then smiled slightly before turning back to watch Rand. He stepped up to the four monarchs and stopped, raising his arms to the sides as if to ask, "What is it you wish of me?" Ethaniela took the lead, as Cadswain had guessed. She was a plump woman, her dark hair pulled away from her face and tied at the back. She strode up to Rand, a man walking beside her and carrying a sheathed sword in his arm, hilt pointed toward her. Nearby, the maidens rustled. They stepped up beside Rand. As usual, they assumed that commands to stay back didn't include them. Ethaniela raised a hand and slapped Rand across the face. Narishma cursed. The maidens raised their veils and drew spears. Min nudged her horse forward, breaking through the line of guards. "Stop," Rand said, raising his hand. He turned, looking at the maidens. Min stilled her mare, patting her on the neck. She was skittish, as might be expected. The maidens reluctantly backed down, though Catswain did take the opportunity to move her horse up beside Min's. Rand turned back to Ethaniela and rubbed his face. "I hope that's some traditional Kandori greeting, Your Majesty." She raised an eyebrow, then gestured to the side, and King Isar of Shinar stepped up to Rand. The man backhanded Rand across the mouth, the force of it causing Rand to stumble. Rand righted himself, again waving the maidens down. He met Isar's eyes. A trickle of blood ran down Rand's chin. The Shinar man studied him for a moment, then nodded and stepped back. Tenobia came next. She slapped Rand with her left hand, a strong blow that cracked in the air. Min felt a flash of pain from Rand. Tenobia shook her hand afterward. King Pytar came last. The aging Arafellan, with only a fringe of hair, walked with his hands behind his back, contemplative. He stepped up to Rand and reached over and dabbed at the blood on Rand's cheek. Then he backhanded Rand with a blow that sent him to his knees, a spray of blood flying from his mouth. Min couldn't sit by any longer. "Rand," she said, jumping down from her saddle and running to him. She reached his side, steadying him while glaring at the monarchs. "How dare you! He came to you peacefully." "Peacefully?" Pytar said. "No, young woman. He did not come to this world in peace. He has consumed the land with terror, chaos, and destruction." "As the prophecies said that he would," Cadswain said, walking up as Min helped Rand back to his feet. "You lay before him the burdens of an entire age. You cannot hire a man to rebuild your house, then reproach him when he must knock down a wall to do the job." "That presumes that he is the Dragon Reborn," Tenobia said, folding her arms. "We—" She cut off as Rand stood, then carefully slid the Kalendor from its sheath.
Skull candy,
Glittering
nice.
blade
Hey,
rasping.
John McDonald.
He held it forth.
That's what
"Do you deny this,
my Bluetooth
Queen
speaker
Zenobia,
I got right now?
shield of
It's
the
a
north
skull
and
candy.
sword of the blight border, high seat of House Kazadi? Will you look upon this weapon and call me a false dragon?" That quieted her. To the side,
But I got
Esau
it
nodded.
off
Behind them,
someone that
ranks
was
of
selling
silent
it off
troops watched
Facebook
with lances,
Marketplace.
pikes, and shields
It
held
was still
high,
brand new.
as if in salute.
The only reason he's getting rid of it is because he upgraded.
Men looked
He got
up
a bigger
and could
speaker.
faintly
They're
make
selling
out
that. It was
people
still
lining
brand
the
new,
walls of Farmakin
box
to
and
watch.
all. And I
"Let
got
us
it for
proceed," Isar said.
I think it was like
"Ethaniela?
40 bucks. I
Very
ended up
well,"
paying for it.
the woman said.
Hey, John
"I will
McDonald.
say this,
Time
Rand
for a
Althor.
dab.
Even if you do prove to be the dragon
Good, Abby,
reborn,
I'm gonna
you
like
have
this
much
joint.
to answer for. You may take your price from my skin, Atheniella, Rand
But I
said
couldn't
softly,
pass that
sliding
price up
Kalendor back into its sheath. But only once the Dark One has
Skull
had his
Candy
day with me.
Bluetooth speaker.
Rand Althor, Pytar said,
Hell
I
yeah.
have a question for you. How you answer will
Turn it
determine the
on.
outcome of this
See what
day.
temp I put it
What
at.
kind of question? Cadswain
We're at
demanded.
that temp. Let me see what's in there.
Please,
Yep.
Rand said, holding
Now
up his
time
hand.
to.
Lord Pytar, I
Now
see
it's
it
on
in your
warm-up
eyes.
mode.
You know that I am the dragon reborn. Is this question necessary? It is vital, Lord Althor, Pytar replied. It drove us here, though my allies did not know it from the start. I've always believed you to be the dragon reborn. That made my quest here even more vital. Men frowned. The aging soldier reached down to his sword hilt, as if ready to draw. The maidens grew more alert. With a start, Min realized Pytar was still standing close to Rand. Too close. He could have that sword out and swinging for Rand's neck in an eye blink, she realized. Pytar placed himself there to be ready to strike. Rand didn't break his gaze from the monarch. Ask your question. How did Telendal Tiraso die? Who? Min asked, looking at Cadswain. The Aes Sedai shook her head, confused. How do you know that name? Rand demanded. Answer the question, Isar said, hand on his hilt, body tense. Around them, ranks of men prepared themselves. She was a clerk, Rand said. During the Age of Legends, Demon Dread, when he came for me after founding the 80-1. She fell in the fighting, lightning from the sky. Her blood on my hands. How do you know that name? Atheniella looked to Isar, then to Tenobi, then finally to Pytar. He nodded, then closed his eyes, letting out a sigh that sounded relieved. He took his hand from his sword. Rand Althor,
That was a rough one there.
Dragon reborn. Would you kindly sit down and speak with us?
Should have kept it at the
We
temp
will
I had
answer
it
your
at.
question.
I raised the temp a little too high.
Why have I never
I
heard
said a
of
little
this
too high. It
so-called
was just
prophecy?
one temp higher.
Cadswain asked.
It was like
Its
taking
nature required secrecy, King
hot
Pytar
dab.
said. They all sat on cushions in a large tent in the middle of the Borderlander army. It made Cadswain's shoulders itch, being surrounded like this. But the fool boy, he would always be a fool boy no matter how old he was, looked perfectly at peace. 13 Aes Sedai waited outside the tent, which wasn't large enough for them all. 13. That hadn't made Althor blink. What man who could channel would sit and make 13 Aes Sedai and not sweat? He's changed, Cadswain told herself. She's going to have to accept that. Not that he didn't need her anymore. Men like him grew overly confident. A few little successes and he'd trip over his own feet and land in some predicament. But, well, she was proud of him. Grudgingly proud. A little. It was given by an Aes Sedai of my own family line, Pytar continued. The square-faced man sipped a small cup of tea. My ancestor, Rio Meyershi, was the only one who heard it. He ordered the words preserved, passed from monarch to monarch for this day. Speak them to me, Rand said. Please. I see him before you, Pytar quoted. Him, the one who lives many lives, the one who gives deaths, the one who raises mountains. He will break what he must break. But first he stands here before our king. You will bloody him, measure his restraint. He speaks. How was the fallen slain? Telendal Tiraso murdered by his hand, the darkness that came the day after the light. You must ask, and you must know your fate. If he cannot answer... He trailed off, falling silent. What? Men asked. If he cannot answer, Pytar said, then you will be lost. You will bring his end swiftly, so that the final days may have their storm, so that light may not be consumed by he who was to have preserved it. I see him, and I weep. You came to murder him, then, Cadsuane said. To test him, Tenobia said. Or so we decided, once Pytar told us of the prophecy. You don't know how close you came to doom, Rand said softly. If I had come to you but a short time earlier, I'd have returned those slaps with balefire. Inside the Guardian? Tenobia sniffed disdainfully. The Guardian blocks the one power, Rand whispered. The one power only. What does he mean by that? Twain thought, frowning. We knew well the risk, Ethaniela said proudly. I demanded the right to slap you first. Our armies had orders to attack if we fell. My family has analyzed the words of the prophecy 100 times over, Pytar said. The meaning seemed clear. It was our task to test the dragon reborn, to see if he could be trusted to go to the last battle. Only a month earlier, Rand said, I wouldn't have had the memories to answer you. This was a foolish gambit. If you had killed me, then all would have been lost. A gamble, Pytar said evenly. Perhaps another would have risen in your stead. No, Rand said. This prophecy was like the others. A declaration of what might happen, not advice. I see it differently, Rand al'Thor, Pytar said, and the others agreed with me. It should be noted, Ethaniela said, that I didn't come south because of this prophecy. My goal was to see if I could bring some sense to the world. And then she grimaced. What? Cadsuane asked, finally sipping her tea. It tasted good, as it usually did near al'Thor these days. The storms, Tenobia said. The snow stopped us, and then finding you proved more difficult than we'd assumed. These gateways. Can you teach them to our Aes Sedai? I will have your Aes Sedai taught in return for a promise, Rand said. You will swear to me. I have need of you. We're sovereigns, Tenobia snapped. I'm not going to bow to you as quickly as my uncle did. We have to speak about that, by the way. Our oaths are to the lands we protect, Isar said. As you wish, Rand said, rising. I once gave you an ultimatum. I phrased it poorly, and I regret that, but I remain your only path to the last battle. Without me, you will remain here, hundreds of leagues from those lands you swore to protect. He nodded to each of them, then helped Min to her feet. Tomorrow I meet with the monarchs of the world. After that, I'm going to go to Sheol Ghul and break the remaining seals on the Dark One's prison. Good day. Cadsuane didn't rise. She sat, sipping her tea. The four seemed astounded. Well, the boy certainly had picked up an understanding of the dramatic. Wait, Pytar finally sputtered, rising. You're going to do what? Rand turned. I'm going to shatter the seals, Lord Pytar. I'm going to break what he must break, as your own prophecy says I must. You cannot stop me, not when those words prove what I will do. Earlier, I stepped in to prevent Maradon from falling. It was near to it, Tenobia. The walls are shattered, your troops bloodied. With help, I was able to save it. Barely. Your countries need you, and so you have two choices. Swear to me, or sit here and let everyone else fight in your place. Cadsuane sipped her tea. That was going a little too far. I'll leave you to discuss my offer, Rand said. I can spare 1 hour. Though before you start your deliberation, could you send for someone on my behalf? There is a man in your army named Huron. I would like to apologize to him. They still looked stunned. Catswain rose to go speak with the sisters waiting outside. She knew a few of them and needed to feel out the others. She didn't worry about what the borderlanders would decide. Althor had them. Another army beneath his banner. I didn't think he'd manage this one. One more day, and it all began. Light, but she hoped that they were ready. Chapter 52. Boots. Elaine settled herself in Glimmer's saddle. The mare was one of the prizes of the royal stable. She was of fine Saldean stock, with a brilliant white mane and coat. The saddle itself was rich, the leather trimmed with wine red and gold. It was the sort of saddle you used when parading. Birgitta rode Rising, a tall dun gelding, also one of the fastest in the royal stables. The warder had chosen both horses. She expected to have to run. Birgitta wore one of Elaine's foxhead copies, though it had a different shape, a thin silver disc with a rose on the front. Elaine carried another wrapped in cloth inside her pocket. She tried making another this morning, but it had melted, nearly setting her dresser on fire. She was having a great deal of difficulty without the original to study. Her dreams of arming all of her personal guards with medallions was looking less and less possible, unless she somehow managed to persuade Matt to give her the original again. Her honor guard fell into mounted ranks around her and Birgitta in the Queen's Plaza. She was bringing only 100 soldiers, 75 guardsmen, and an inner ring of 25 guardswomen. It was a tiny force, but she'd have gone without those 100 if she'd been able to get away with it. She couldn't afford to be seen as a conqueror. I don't like this, Birgitta said. You don't like anything lately, Elaine said. I swear you're becoming more irritable by the day. It's because you're becoming more foolhardy by the day. Oh, come now. This is hardly the most foolhardy thing I've done. Only because you've set a very high benchmark for yourself, Elaine. It will be fine, Elaine said, glancing southward. Why do you keep looking in that direction? Rand, Elaine said, feeling that warmth again, pulsing from the knot of emotions in her mind. He's getting ready for something. He feels troubled and peaceful at the same time. Light, but that man could be confusing. The meeting would happen in 1 day, if his original deadline still held. Egwene was right. Breaking the seals would be foolish, but Rand would see reason. Elise rode up to her, accompanied by 3 kinswomen. Sarasia was a plump woman with a grandmotherly air. Dark-skinned Kima kept her black hair in 3 long braids, and prim Nashia, with a youthful face, wore a baggy dress. The 4 took up positions beside Elaine. Only 2 of them were strong enough for a gateway. Many of the kin were weaker than most Aes Sedai, but that would be enough, assuming Elaine had trouble embracing the source. Can you do something to prevent archers from hitting her? Birgitta asked Elise. Some kind of weave? Elise cocked her head thoughtfully. I know of one that might help, she said, but I've never tried it. Another kinswoman wove a gateway up ahead. It opened to a span of rough, brown grass land outside of Cairhien. A much larger army waited there, wearing the cuirasses and bell-shaped helmets of Cairhienan troops. The officers were easy to spot with their dark clothing and the colors of the houses they served. They wore Khan Rising over their backs. Tall, narrow-faced Lorstrom sat at the front of his army, which wore dark green with crimson slashes. Bertome was on the other side. Their forces looked to be about the same size, 5,000 each. The other 4 houses had fielded smaller armies. If they wanted to take you captive, Birgitta said grimly, you're handing them the chance. There's no way to do this and remain safe. Not unless I want to hide in my palace and send my troops in. That would only lead to rebellion in Kairin and potential collapse in Andor. She glanced at the warder. I'm queen now, Birgitta. You're not going to be able to keep me from danger, no more than you could keep a lone soldier safe on the battlefield. Birgitta nodded. Stay close to me and Gaibon. Gaibon approached on a large, dappled gelding, with Birgitta on one side of her and Gaibon on the other, and with both of their horses taller than Elaine's. A would-be assassin would have great difficulty picking her off without first hitting her friends. So it would be for the rest of her life. She nudged Glimmer into motion, and her troop made its way through the gateway and onto Kyrianan soil. The noblemen and noblewomen ahead bowed or curtsied from horseback, and those oblations were deeper this time than they had been when meeting Elaine in her throne room. The show had begun. The city was just ahead, walls still blackened from fires during the fight with the Shido. Elaine could sense Birgitta's tension as the gateway vanished behind. The kin around Elaine embraced the source, and Elise wove an unfamiliar weave, placing it in the air around the inner ring of troops. It made a small but swift wind spinning in the air. Birgitta's anxiety was contagious, and Elaine found herself holding her reins in a tight grip. Glimmer moved forward. The air was drier here in Kyrian, with a faint dusty scent to it. The sky was overcast. The Kyrianan troops formed around her small group of Andorans in white and red. Most of the Kyrianan forces were foot, though there was some heavy cavalry, horses in shiny barding, and men carrying lances pointed high into the air. All marched in perfect lines, protecting Elaine, or keeping her captive. Lorstrom moved his bay stallion closer to Elaine's outer ranks. Gaibon glanced at her and she nodded, so the captain allowed him to approach. The city is nervous, Your Majesty, Lorstrom said. Birgitta was still careful to keep her mount between his and Elaine's. There are unfortunate rumors surrounding your ascension. Rumors you probably initiated, Elaine thought, before you decided to support me instead. Surely they won't rise against your troops? I hope they will not. He eyed her from under his flat cap of forest green. He wore a civilian dress, a black coat that went down to his knees, and slashes of color across it all the way down to denote his house. It was the type of clothing he'd wear if going to a ball. That projected a sense of confidence. His force wasn't seizing the city. It was escorting the new queen with an honorary parade. It is unlikely that there will be armed resistance, but I wanted to warn you. Lorstrom nodded to her with respect. He knew how she was manipulating him, but he also accepted that manipulation. She would have to keep a careful watch on him in the years to come. Kyrian was such a boxish city, all straight lines and fortified towers. Though there was a beauty to some of its architecture, there was no comparing it to Camelin or Tarvalon. They rode directly in through the northern gates, the river Alguenia to their right. Crowds waited inside. Lorstrom and the others had done their work well. There were cheers, probably started by carefully placed courtiers. As Elaine entered the city, the cheers grew louder. That surprised her. She had expected hostility. And yes, there was some of that. The occasional thrown piece of refuse hurled from the back of the crowd. She caught a jeer here and there, but most seemed pleased. As she rode down that broad passageway, lined with the rectangular buildings Karianin favored, she realized that perhaps these people had been waiting for an event like this, talking of it, spreading tales. Some of those tales had been hostile, and those were what Nari had reported. But they now seemed to her more a sign of worry than hostility. Kyrian had been too long without a monarch, their king dead by unknown hands, the Lord Dragon seemingly abandoning them. Her confidence grew. Kyrian was a wounded city, the burned and broken remnants of the foregate outside. Cobbles had been torn up to be thrown from the walls. The city had never fully recovered from the Aiel War, and the unfinished topless towers, symmetrical in design but woefully forlorn in appearance, were a lofty declaration of that fact. That bloody game of houses was nearly as bad a scourge. Could she change that? The people around her sounded hopeful, as if they knew what a twisted mess their nation had become. One could sooner take away an Aiel's spears than cut the craftiness out of the Kyrianen, but perhaps she could teach them a greater loyalty to country and throne, so long as they had a throne worth that loyalty. The Sun Palace stood at the exact center of the city. Like the rest of the city, it was square and angular, but here the architecture gave a sense of imposing strength. It was a grand building, despite the broken wing where the attempt on Rand's life had taken place. More nobles waited here, standing on covered steps or in front of ornate carriages, women in formal gowns with wide hoops, the men in neat coats of dark colors, hats on their heads. Many looked skeptical, and some amazed. Elaine shot Birgitta a satisfied smile. It's working. Nobody expected me to ride to the palace, escorted by a Kyrianan army. Birgitta said nothing. She was still tense, and probably would be until Elaine returned to Camelin. Two women stood at the foot of the steps, one a pretty woman with bells in her hair, the other with curly hair and a face that did not seem Aes Sedai, for all the fact that she had been one for years. That was Sashal Anderley, and the other woman, who did have an ageless face, was Samitsu Tamagawa. From what Elaine's sources had been able to determine, these two were as close to rulers as the city had in Rand's absence. She corresponded with both, and found Sashal remarkably keen at understanding the Kyrianan way of thinking. She'd offered Elaine the city, but had implied that she understood that being offered it and taking it were two different things. Sashal stepped forward. Your Majesty, she said formally, let it be known that the Lord Dragon gives you all rights and claim to this land. All formal control he had over the land is ceded to you, and the position of steward over the nation is dissolved. May you rule in wisdom and peace. Elaine nodded to her regally from horseback, but inside she seethed. She'd said she didn't mind Rand's help taking this throne, but it wasn't like she wanted her nose rubbed in it. Still, Sashal seemed to take her position seriously, though from what Elaine had discovered, that position was in large measure self-created. Elaine and her procession dismounted. Had Rand thought that it would be as easy as that to give her the throne? He'd stayed in Kyrian long enough to know how they schemed. One Aes Sedai making a proclamation would never have been enough, but having powerful nobles support her directly should be enough to do it. Their procession made its way up the steps. They entered, and each of those supporting her brought a smaller honor guard of 50. Elaine brought her entire force. It was crowded, but she didn't intend to leave any behind. The inner hallways were straight, with peaked ceilings and golden trim. The symbol of the rising sun emblazoned each door. There were alcoves for riches to be displayed, but many were empty. Looting Aiel had taken their fifth from this palace. Upon reaching the entrance to the Grand Hall of the Sun, Elaine's Andoran guardsmen and guardswomen arranged themselves, lining the outer hallway. Elaine took a deep breath, then strode into the throne room with a group of 10. Blue-streaked marble columns rose to the ceiling at the sides of the room, and the sun throne sat on its blue marble dais at the back of the large hall. The seat was of gilded wood, but was surprisingly unassuming. Perhaps that was why Layman had decided to build himself a new throne, using Avandoral Dera itself as a material. Elaine walked up to the dais, then turned as the Kyrianan nobility entered, her supporters
nice.
first, then the others,
That's always
ranked
good when you
according
find
to the
something like that.
complicated dictates of Des Demar. Those rankings could change by the day, if not the hour. Birgitta eyed each one who entered, but the Kyrianan were models of propriety. None would show anything like Elorian's audacity in Andor. She was a patriot, if one who frustratingly continued to disagree with Elaine. In Kyrian, one did not do such things. Once the crowd had stilled, Elaine took a deep breath. She'd considered a speech, but her mother had taught her that sometimes decisive action made for the best speech. Elaine moved to sit down in the throne. Birgitta caught her arm. Elaine glanced at her questioningly, but the warder was eyeing the throne. "Wait a moment," she said, bending down. The nobles began murmuring one to another, and Lorstrom stepped up to Elaine. "Your Majesty?" "Birgitta," Elaine said, blushing. "Is this really necessary?" Birgitta ignored her, prodding at the seat's cushion. Light. Was the warder determined to embarrass her in every possible situation? Surely the... "Aha!" Birgitta said, yanking something from the pillowed cushion. Elaine started, then stepped closer, Lorstrom and Bertome at her side. Birgitta was holding up a small needle, tipped black. "Hidden in the cushion." Elaine paled. "It was the only place they knew you'd be, Elaine," Birgitta said softly. She knelt down and began prodding for more traps. Lorstrom had grown flushed. "I will find who did this, Your Majesty," he said in a low voice, a dangerous voice. "They will know my wrath." "Not if they know mine first," Stocky Bertome said, looking over the needle. "Obviously an assassination attempt intended for the Lord Dragon, Your Majesty," Lorstrom said in a louder voice for the benefit of the audience. "None would dare try to kill you, our beloved sister from Andor." "That is good to hear," Elaine said, eyeing him. That expression of hers said to everyone in the room that she would put up with this ruse, intended to save his face. As her strongest supporter, the shame of an assassination attempt fell on him. Agreeing to let him save face would cost him. He lowered his eyes briefly in understanding. Like she hated this game, but she would play it, and she would play it well. "Is it safe?" she asked Birgitta. The warder rubbed her chin. "One way to find out," she said, then plopped herself down in the throne with an unceremonious amount of force. Not a few of the nobles in the hall gasped, and Lorstrom grew more pale. "Not very comfortable," Birgitta said, leaning to the side, then pushing her back up against the wood. "I would have expected a monarch's throne to be more cushioned, what with your delicate backside and all." "Birgitta!" Elaine hissed, feeling her face grow red again.
Hell yeah, that's what you do.
In the sun's throne?
Especially you don't have access to it that much.
Birgitta said. "I can taste your food if I want. I
buy
can walk
bulk.
through doorways before you, and I can bloody sit in your chair if I think it will protect you." She grinned. "Besides," she added in a lower voice, "I always wondered what one of these felt like." The warder stood up, still wary but also satisfied. Elaine turned and faced the nobility of Kyrian. "You have waited long for this," she said. "Some of you are dissatisfied, but remember that half of my blood is Kyrianan. This alliance will make both of our nations great. I do not demand your trust, but I do demand your obedience." She hesitated, then added, "Remember again, this is as the Dragon Reborn wishes it to be." She saw that they understood. Rand had conquered this city once, though it had been liberated from the Shido. They would be wise not to tempt him to come back and conquer it again. a queen used the tools that she had at hand. She had taken Andor on her own. She would let Rand help her with Kyrian. She sat down. Such a simple thing, but the implications would be far-reaching indeed. Gather your individual forces and house guards, she commanded to the collected nobles. You will be marching with the forces of Andor through gateways to a place known as the Field of Merrilor. We will be meeting the Dragon Reborn. The nobles seemed surprised. She would come in, take the throne, then command their armies from the city the same day? She smiled. Best to act quickly and decisively. It would build precedent for obeying her, and would begin to ready them for the last battle. Also, she announced as they began to whisper, I want you to gather every man in this realm who can hold a sword and conscript them into the Queen's army. There won't be much time for training, but every man will be needed in the last battle, and those women who wish to fight may report as well. Also send word to the Bell Founders in your city. I will need to meet with them within the hour. But, Bertone said, the coronation feast, your majesty. We will feast when the last battle has been won, and Kyrian's children are safe, Elaine said. She needed to distract them from their plots, give them work to keep them busy if possible. Move! Pretend the last battle is on your doorstep and will arrive on the morrow. For indeed it might.
Matt leaned against a dead tree, looking over his camp. He breathed in and out, smiling, feeling the beautiful comfort of knowing that he was no longer being chased. He had forgotten how good that felt. Better than a pretty serving girl on each knee, that feeling was. Well, better than one serving girl, anyway. A military camp at evening was one of the most comfortable places in all the world, even if half the camp was empty, the men there having gone to Kyrian. The sun had set, and some of those who remained had turned in. But for those who had pulled afternoon duty the next day, there was no reason to sleep just yet. A dozen fire pits smoldered through the camp, men sitting to share tales of exploits, women left behind, or of rumors from far off. Tongues of flame flickered as men laughed, sitting on walls or rocks, someone occasionally digging into the coals with a twisted branch and stirring tiny sparks into the air as his friends sang Come Ye Maids or Fallen Willows at noon. The men of the band were from a dozen different nations, but this camp was their true home. Matt strode through them, hat on his head, Ashandarai over his shoulder. He had gotten a new scarf for his neck. People knew about his scar, but there was no reason to show it off like one of Luca's bloody wagons. The scarf he had chosen this time was red, in memory of Tylan and the others who had fallen to the Golem. For a short time he had been tempted to choose pink. A very short time. Matt smiled. Though there were songs ringing from several of the campfires, none were loud, and there was a healthy stillness about the camp. Not a silence. Silence was never good. He hated silence. Made him wonder who was trying so hard to sneak up on him. No, this was a stillness. Men snoring softly, fires crackling, voices singing, weeds crunching as those on watch passed by. The peaceful noises of men enjoying their lives. Matt found his way back to his table outside his darkened tent. He sat down, looking over the papers he had stacked there. The inside of the tent had been too stuffy. Besides, he had not wanted to wake Oliver. Matt's tent rippled in the wind. His seat did look odd, the fine oak table sitting in a patch of hen's foot, Matt's chair beside it, a pitcher of mulled cider on the ground beside him. The papers on his table were weighted down with various rocks he had picked up, lit by a single flickering lamp. He should not have to have stacks of paper. He should be able to sit at one of those fires and sing Dance with Jack of the Shadows. He could faintly make out the words of the song from a nearby campfire. Papers. Well, he had agreed to Elaine's employment, and there were papers for that sort of thing. and papers about setting up the Dragon cruise, papers about supplies, discipline reports, and all kinds of nonsense. And a few papers he had been able to wiggle out of Her Royal Majesty, spy reports he had wanted to look over, reports on the Shan-Chan. Much of the news was not new to him. By courtesy of Baron's Gateway, Matt had traveled to Kenlin more quickly than most rumors. But Elaine had gateways of her own, and some of the news from Tyr or Ilion was fresh. There was talk of the new Shan-Chan Empress. So Tuon really had crowned herself, or whatever it was the Shan-Chan did to name a new leader. That made him smile. Light that they did not know what they were in for. They probably thought they did, but she would surprise them sure as the sky was blue. Or, well, it had been gray lately. There was also talk of sea folk in alliance with the Shan-Chan. Nat dismissed that. The Shan-Chan had captured enough sea folk vessels to give that impression, but it was not the truth. He found some pages with news about Rand, too. Most of it unspecific or untrustworthy. Blasted colors. Rand was sitting around and talking with some people in a tent. Perhaps he was in Arab-Daman. But he could not be both there and fighting in the borderlands now, could he? One rumor said that Rand had killed Queen Tylan. Which bloody idiots thought that? He turned over the reports on Rand quickly. He hated having to banish those flaming colors over and over again. At least Rand was wearing clothes this time. The last page was curious. Wolves running in enormous packs, congregating in clearings and howling in chorus. The skies shining red at night. Livestock lining up in the fields, all facing toward the north, watching silently. The footprints of shadow-spawn armies in the middle of fields.
In there.
These things smelled of simple hearsay, passed on from farm wife to farm wife until they reached the ears of Elaine's spies. Matt looked over. The sheet, then, without even thinking of it, realized he had pulled Baron's envelope out of his pocket. The still sealed letter was looking worn and dirty, but he had not opened it. It seemed like the most difficult thing he had ever done, resisting that urge. Now that is a sight of some irregularity, a woman's voice said. Matt looked up to see Satala strolling toward him. She wore a brown dress that laced over her ample bosom. Not that Matt spent any time looking at it. You like my den? Matt asked. He set the envelope aside and put the last of the spy reports on a stack, just beside a series of sketches he'd been doing on some new crossbows, based on the ones Talmanas had bought. The papers threatened to blow away. As he had no rock for this stack, he pulled off one of his boots and set it on the top. Your den? Satala asked, amused. Sure, Matt said, scratching the bottom of his stockinged foot. You'll have to make an appointment with my steward if you want to come in. Your steward? The stump right over there, Matt said, nodding. Not the little one, the big one with moss growing up on the top. She raised an eyebrow. He's quite good, Matt said. Hardly ever lets anyone in I don't want to see. You are an interesting creature, Matrim Cawthon, Satala said, seating herself on the larger stump. Her dress was after the Ebudar style, with the side pinned up to reveal petticoats colorful enough to scare away a tinker. Did you want anything specific? Matt asked. Or did you just drop by so that you could sit on my steward's head? I heard that you visited the palace again today. Is it true that you know the Queen? Matt shrugged. Elaine's a nice enough girl. Pretty thing, that's for certain. You don't shock me anymore, Matram Coffin, Satala noted. I've realized that the things you say are often intended to do that. They were? I say what I'm thinking, Mistress Anand. Why does it matter to you if I know the Queen? Merely another piece of the puzzle that you represent, Satala said. I received a letter from Jolene today. What did she want from you? She didn't ask for anything. She merely wanted to send word that they had arrived safely in Tarbalan. You must have read it wrong. Satala gave him a chiding stare.
Be right back.
Jolene Sadai respects you, Master Coffin. She often spoke highly of you, and the way that you rescued not only her, but the other two. She asked after you in the letter. Matt blinked. Really? She said things like that? Satala nodded. Burn me, he said. Almost makes me feel bad for painting her mouth blue. But you wouldn't have known she thought that way, considering how she treated me. Speaking such things to a man inflates his opinion of himself. One would think that the way she treated you would have been enough. She's Aes Sedai, Matt muttered. She treats everyone like they're mud to be scraped off her boots. Satala glared at him. She had a stately way about her, part grandmother, part court lady, part no-nonsense innkeeper. Sorry, he said. Some Aes Sedai aren't as bad as others. I didn't mean to insult you. I'll take that for a compliment, Satala said. Though I'm not Aes Sedai. Matt shrugged, finding a nice small rock at his feet. He used it to replace his boot atop the stack of paper. The rains of the last few days had passed, leaving a crisp freshness to the air. I know you said it didn't hurt, Matt said. But what does it feel like? The thing you lost. She pursed her lips. What is the most delightful food you enjoy, Master Coffin? The one thing that you would eat above all others? Ma's sweet pies, Matt said immediately. Well, it is like that, Satala said. Knowing that you used to be able to enjoy those pies every day, but now they have been denied you. Your friends, they can have as many of those pies as they want. You envy them, and you hurt. But at the same time, you're happy. At least someone can enjoy what you cannot. Matt nodded slowly. Why is it that you hate Aes Sedai so, Master Coffin? Satala asked. I don't hate them, Matt said. Burn me, but I don't. But sometimes a man can't seem to do two things without women wanting him to do one of those things a different way and ignore the other one completely. You aren't forced to take their advice, and I warrant that much of the time you eventually admit it is good advice. Matt shrugged. Sometimes a man just likes to do what he wants without someone telling him what's wrong with it and what's wrong with him. That's all. And it has nothing to do with your peculiar views of nobles. Most Aes Sedai act as if they were noblewomen after all. I have nothing against nobles, Matt said, straightening his coat. I just don't fancy being one myself. Why is that then? Matt sat for a moment. Why was it? Finally, he looked down at his foot, then replaced his boot. It's boots. Boots? Satala looked confused. Boots, Matt said with a nod, tying his laces. It's all about the boots. But, you see, Matt said, pulling the laces tight, a lot of men don't have to worry much about what boots to wear. They're the poorest of folks. If you ask one of them, what boots are you going to wear today, Mop? Their answer is easy. Well, Matt, I only have one pair, so I guess I'm going to wear that pair. Matt hesitated. Or I guess they wouldn't say that to you, Satala, since you're not me at all. They wouldn't call you Matt, you understand? I understand, she said, sounding amused. Anyway, for people that have a little coin, the question of which boots to wear is harder. You see, average men like me, be either. And I'm an average man, mind you. Of course you are. Bloody right I am, Matt said, finishing with his laces and sitting up. An average man might have 3 pairs of boots. Your third best pair of boots, those are the boots you wear when you're working at something unpleasant. They might rub after a few paces, and they might have a few holes, but they're good enough to keep your footing. You don't mind mucking them up in the fields or the barn. All right, Satala said. Then you have your second best pair of boots, Matt said. Those are your day-to-day boots. You wear those if you are going over to dinner at the neighbor's, or in my case, you wear those if you're going to battle. They're nice boots, give you good footing, and you don't mind being seen in them or anything. And your best pair of boots? Satala asked. You wear those to social events, like a ball or dining with a local dignitary? Balls? Dignitaries? Bloody ashes, woman. I thought you were an innkeeper. Satama blushed faintly. We're not going to any balls, Matt said. But if we had to, I suspect we'd wear our second best pair of boots. If they're good enough for visiting old lady Hembrew next door, then they're bloody well good enough for stepping on the toes of any woman fool enough to dance with us. Then what are the best boots for? Walking, Matt said. Any farmer knows the value of good boots when you go walking a distance. Satala looked thoughtful. All right. But what does this have to do with being a nobleman? Everything, Matt said. Don't you see? If you're an average fellow, you know exactly when to use your boots. A man can keep track of 3 pairs of boots. Life is simple when you have 3 pairs of boots. But nobleman? Talmanas claims he has 40 different pairs of boots at home. 40 pairs. Can you imagine that? She smiled in amusement. 40 pairs, Matt repeated, shaking his head. 40 bloody pairs. And they aren't all the same kind of boots either. There's a pair for each outfit, and a dozen pairs in different styles that will match any number of half your outfits. You have boots for kings, boots for high lords, and boots for normal people. You have boots for winter and boots for summer, boots for rainy days and boots for dry days. You have bloody shoes that you wear only when you're walking to the bathing chamber. Lopin used to complain that I didn't have a pair to wear to the privy at night. I see. So you're using boots as a metaphor for the onus of responsibility and decision placed upon the aristocracy as they assume leadership of complex political and social positions. Metaphor for... Matt scowled. Bloody ashes, woman. This isn't a metaphor for anything. It's just boots. Satala shook her head. You're an unconventionally wise man, Matram Cawthon. I try my best, he noted, reaching for the pitcher of mulled cider. To be unconventional, I mean. He poured a cup and lifted it in her direction. She accepted graciously and drank, then stood. I will leave you to your own amusements then, Master Cawthon. But if you have made any progress on that gateway for me, Elaine said she would have one for you soon, in a day or two. Once I'm back from the errand I have to run with Tom and Noel, I'll see it done. She nodded in understanding. If he did not return from that errand, she would see to Ulver. She turned to leave. Matt waited until she was gone before taking a slip of the cider straight from the pitcher. He had been doing that all evening, but he figured she would probably rather not know. It was the sort of thing women were better off not thinking about. He turned back to his reports, but soon found his mind wandering to the Tower of Genjai and those bloody snakes and foxes. Birgitte's comments had been enlightening, but not particularly encouraging. 2 months? 2 bloody months spent wandering those hallways? That was a mighty steaming bowl of worry served up like afternoon slop. Beyond that, she had taken fire, music, and iron. Breaking the rules was not so original an idea. He was not surprised. Likely, the day the light made the very first man, and that man had made the first rule, someone else had thought to break it. People like Elaine made up rules to suit them. People like Matt found ways to get around the stupid rules. Unfortunately, Birgitta, one of the legendary heroes of the Horn, had not been able to defeat the Alefin and Eelfin. That was disconcerting. Well, Matt had something she had not had. His luck. He sat thoughtfully, leaning back in his chair. One of his soldiers passed by. Clintock saluted. The Red Arm checked on Matt every half hour. They still had not gotten over the shame of letting the Golem sneak into camp. He picked up Baron's letter, feeling it over in his fingers. The worn corners, the smudges of dirt on the once white paper. He tapped it against the wood. Then he tossed it onto the desk. No. No, he was not going to open it, even when he got back. That was that. He would never know what was in it, and he bloody did not care. He stood up and went looking for Tom and Noel. Tomorrow, they would leave for the Tower of Genchai.
Chapter 53. Gateways. Pavara kept her tongue as she walked through the village of the Black Tower with Javendra and Mazrin Taim. There was activity all through the place. There was always activity in the Black Tower. Soldiers felling trees nearby, dedicated, stripping the bark away, then slicing the logs into lumber with focused jets of air. Sawdust coated the path. With a chill, Pavara realized the stack of boards nearby had probably been cut by Ashimo. Light. She'd known what she'd find here. It was much harder to face than she'd assumed it would be. And you see, Taim said, walking with one hand folded, fingers making a fist behind his back. With his other hand, he pointed toward a distant, part-finished wall of black stone. Guard posts spaced at 50-foot intervals, each with 2 Ashaman atop them. He smiled in satisfaction. This place will be impregnable. Yes, indeed, Javendra said. Impressive. Her tone was flat and uninterested. But the item I wished to speak with you about, if we could choose men with the dragon pin to... This again? Taim said. He had fire in his eyes, this Mazrim Taim, a tall, black-haired man with high Saldean cheekbones. He smiled, or the closest he came to such an expression. A half-smile did not reach his eyes. It looked predatory. I have made my will known, and yet you continue to push. No, soldiers and dedicated only. As you demand, Javendra said. We will continue our consideration. Weeks pass, Taim replied. And still you consider? Well, far be it from me to question Aes Sedai. I care not what you do. But the women outside my gates claim to be from the White Tower as well. Do you not wish me to invite them in to meet with you? Pavara felt a chill. He always seemed to know too much, and hint that he knew too much about internal White Tower politics. That won't be needed, Javendra said coldly. As you wish, he said. You should make your choices soon. They grow impatient, and Althor has given them permission to bond my men. They will not suffer my stalling forever. They are rebels. You need pay them no heed at all. Rebels, Taim said, with a much larger force than you. What do you have? 6 women? From the way you talk, you seem to intend to bomb the entirety of the Black Tower. Perhaps we might, Pavara spoke calmly. No limit was placed upon us. Taim glanced at her, and she had the distinct feeling she was being inspected by a wolf, considering whether she'd make a good meal. She shoved that feeling aside. She was Aes Sedai, no easy meat. Still, she couldn't help remembering that they were only 6, inside a camp filled with hundreds of men who could channel. I once saw a sky fisher dying on the city docks of Ilion, Taim said. The bird was choking, having tried to swallow 2 fish at once. Did you help the sorry thing? Javindra asked. Fools will always choke themselves when they grasp for too much, Aes Sedai, Taim said. What matters that to me? I had a fine meal of it that night, the flesh of the bird and of the fish. I must go. But be warned, now that I have a defensible perimeter, you must give me warning if you wish to pass outside. You mean to keep comings and goings that tight? Kavara asked. The world becomes a dangerous place, Taim said smoothly. I must think of the needs of my men. Kavara had noticed how he saw to the needs of his men. A group of young soldiers passed by, saluting Taim. 2 bore bruised features, one with an eye swollen shut. Ashaman were beaten brutally for making mistakes in their training, then forbidden healing. The Aes Sedai were never touched. In fact, the deference they were shown bordered on mockery. Taim nodded, then stalked off, meeting up with 2 of his Ashaman who waited nearby, beside the smithy. They immediately began speaking in hushed tones. I don't like this, Kavara said as soon as the men were away. Perhaps she said it too quickly, betraying her worries, but this place had her on edge. This could easily turn to disaster. I'm beginning to think that we should do as I originally stated, bond a few dedicated each and return to the White Tower. Our task was never to lock down the entire Black Tower, but to gain access to Ashaman and learn about them. That's what we're doing, Javindra said. I've been learning much these last few weeks. What have you been doing? Kavara did not rise to the other woman's tone. Must she be so contrary? Kavara had leadership of this team, and the others would defer to her. But it didn't mean that they would always be pleasant about it. This has been an interesting opportunity, Javindra continued, scanning the tower grounds. And I do think he will yield eventually on the subject of full Ashama. Kavara frowned. Javindra couldn't honestly think that, could she, after how stubborn Taim had been? Yes, Kavara had yielded to suggestions that they remain in the Black Tower a little longer to learn of its workings and ask Taim to allow them access to the more powerful Ashaman. But it was obvious now he would not give in. Surely Javindra saw that. Unfortunately, Kavara was having great difficulty reading Javindra lately. Originally, the woman had seemed against coming to the Black Tower, only agreeing to the mission because the highest had ordered it. Yet now she offered reasons to remain here. Javindra, Kavara said, stepping closer. You heard what he said. We now need permission to leave. This place is turning into a cage. I think we're safe, Javindra said, waving a hand. He doesn't know we have gateways. So far as we know, Kavara said. If you order it, I'm sure the others will go, Javindra said. But I intend to continue to use the opportunity to learn. Kavara took a deep breath. Insufferable woman. Surely she wasn't going so far as to ignore Pavara's leadership of the group, after the highest herself had placed Pavara in charge? Light, but Javindra was growing erratic. They parted without another word, Pavara spinning and walking back down the path. She kept her temper with difficulty. That last statement had been close to outright defiance. Well, if she wanted to disobey and remain, so be it. It was time to be returning to the White Tower. Men in black coats walked all around her. Many nodded with those too obsequious grins of feigned respect. Her weeks here had not done anything to make her more comfortable around these men. She would make a few of them warders. 3. She could handle 3, couldn't she? Those dark expressions, like the eyes of executioners while waiting for the next neck to line up before them. The way some of them muttered to themselves, or jumped at shadows, or held their heads and looked dazed. She stood in the very pit of madness itself, and it made her skin creep as if covered in caterpillars. She couldn't help quickening her pace. No, she thought. I can't leave Javendra here, not without trying one more time. Pavara would explain to the others, give them the order to leave. Then she'd ask them, Tarna first, to approach Javendra. Surely their united arguments would convince her. Pavara reached the huts they had been given. She purposely did not look to the side, toward the line of small buildings where the bonded Aes Sedai made their homes. She'd heard what some of them were doing, trying to control their Ashaman using various methods. That made her skin crawl too. While she thought most Reds had too harsh an opinion of men, what those women did crossed the line with a heedless leap. She stepped inside her hut, and there found Tarna at the desk, writing a letter. The Aes Sedai had to share their huts, and Pavara had picked Tarna specifically. Pavara might have been made leader of this group, but Tarna was keeper of the chronicles. The politics of this particular expedition were very delicate, with so many influential members and so many opinions. Last night, Tarna had agreed that it was time to leave. She'd work with Pavara on going to Javendra. Taim has locked down the Black Tower, Pavara said calmly, sitting on her bed in the small circular chamber. We now need his permission to leave. He said it offhandedly, as if it weren't really meant to stop us. Just a rule he'd forgotten to give us a blanket exception to. Likely that's just what it was, Tarna said. I'm sure it's nothing. Pavara fell still. What? She tried again. Javendra still irrationally thinks he will change his mind on letting us bond full Ashaman. It's time to bond dedicated and leave, but she's hinted that she'll remain regardless of my intentions. I want you to speak to her. Actually, Tarna said, continuing to write, I've been thinking on what we discussed last night. Perhaps I was hasty. There is much to learn here, and there is the matter of the rebels outside. If we leave, they get to bond Ashaman, which should not be allowed. The woman looked up, and Pavara froze. There was something different in Tarna's eyes, something cold. She'd always been a distant one, but this was worse. Tarna smiled, a grimace that looked completely unnatural on her face, like the smile on the lips of a corpse. She turned back to her writing. Something is very, very wrong here, Pavara thought. Well, you may be right, she found herself saying. Her mouth worked, though her mind reeled. This expedition was your suggestion, after all. I will think on it further, if you'll excuse me. Tarna waved ambivalently. Pavara stood, years as an Aes Sedai, keeping her profound worry from showing in her posture. She stepped outside, then walked eastward, along the unfinished wall. Yes, guard stations had been set up regularly. Earlier this morning, those hadn't been manned. Now they were, with men who could channel. One of those men could strike her dead before she could respond. She couldn't see their weaves, and she couldn't strike first because of her oaths. She turned and walked to a small stand of trees, a place that was to become a garden. Inside, she sat down on a stump, breathing heavily. The coldness, almost lifelessness, she'd seen in Tarna's eyes still chilled her. Pavara had been ordered by the highest not to risk gateways unless the situation were dire. This seemed like a dire situation to her. She embraced the source and wove the proper weave. The weave fell apart the moment she completed it. No gateway formed. Eyes wide, she tried again, but got the same result. She tried other weaves, and they worked, but gateways failed every time. Her chill became frost within her. She was trapped. They all were.
Perrin clasped hands with Matt. "Good luck, my friend." Matt grinned, tugging down the broad brim of his dark hat. "Luck? I hope this all comes down to luck. I'm good with luck." Matt carried a bulging pack over one shoulder. Tom had a similar pack, as did the bony, gnarled man that Matt had introduced as Noel. Perrin still wasn't clear on what they were bringing. Matt only planned to be at the tower for a few days, so there was no need for a lot of supplies. The small group stood on the traveling ground outside Perrin's camp. Behind them, Perrin's people shouted back and forth, breaking down the camp. None had any inkling of how important this day could prove. Moiraine. Moiraine was alive. Light, let it be so. "Are you certain I can't convince you to take more help?" Perrin asked. Matt nodded. "Sorry, these things, well, they tend to be particular. The note was clear. Only 3 of us can enter, otherwise we'll fail. If we fail anyway, well, I guess it will be our own bloody fault then, won't it?" Perrin frowned. "Just be careful. I'm expecting another helping from your pouch of tobacco at Master Denizal's place when you return." "You'll have it," Tom said, taking Perrin's offered hand. He hesitated, smiling, a faint twinkle in his eyes. "What?" Perrin asked. Tom repositioned his pack. "Is every last farm boy I know going to transform into a nobleman by the time this is through?" "I'm no nobleman," Matt said. "Oh?" Tom asked. "Prince of the Ravens?" Matt pulled his hat down. "People can call me what they want. That doesn't mean I'm one of them." "Actually," Tom said, "Open the gateway so we can get going," Matt said. "No more nonsense." Perrin nodded to Grady. The air rent, a twisting beam of light opening a portal that overlooked a broad, slow-moving river. "This is as close as he can get," Perrin said. "At least, not without a better description of the place." "It'll do," Matt said, poking his head through the gateway. "You'll open one for us to get back?" "Each day at noon," Grady said, repeating Perrin's orders to him. "Into that exact spot." He smiled. "Take care you don't get your toes cut off when it appears, Master Coffin." "I'll do my best," Matt said. "I'm attached to those toes." He took a breath and stepped through the gateway. Quiet Noel followed, smelling of determination. That one was a lot tougher than he looked. Tom nodded to Perrin, mustaches wagging, then hopped through. He was spry, though he still bore the stiff leg from fighting that fade years ago. "Light guide you," Perrin prayed, raising a hand to the 3 as they trudged along the river's bank. Moiraine. Perrin should send word to Rand. The colors appeared, showing Rand speaking with a group of Borderlanders. But no. Perrin couldn't tell Rand until he was certain she lived. To do otherwise would be too cruel, and would be an invitation for Rand to meddle in Matt's mission. Perrin turned as the portal closed. As he stepped, he felt a faint throbbing from his leg where Slayer's arrow had hit him. He had been healed of that wound, and from what he'd been able to tell, the healing had been complete. There was no injury, but his leg, it felt like it could remember the wound anyway. It was like a shadow, very faint, almost unnoticeable. Fail walked up to him, her face curious. Gaul was with her, and Perrin smiled at the way he kept glancing over his shoulder at Bane and Chiod. One carried his spears, the other his bow, so that he didn't have to, apparently. "I missed the send-off?" Fail asked. "As you intended," Perrin replied. She sniffed. "Matrim Coffin is a bad influence. I'm surprised he didn't drag you off to another tavern before leaving." Amusingly, the colors appeared, showing him Matt, who had just left, walking along the river. "He's not as bad as all that," Perrin said. "Are we ready?" "Aravine has everyone organized and moving," Fail said. "We should be ready to march within the hour." That proved a good estimate. In about a half hour, Perrin stood to the side as an enormous gateway split the air, created by Grady and Niall, linked together with the Aes Sedai and Adara. Nobody had questioned Perrin's decision to move. If Rand was traveling to this place known as the Field of Marilor, then that was where Perrin wanted to be. It was where he needed to be. The land beyond this gateway was more rugged than southern Andor. Fewer trees, more prairie grass. Some ruins lay in the distance. The open area before them was filled with tents, banners, and camps. It looked as if Egwene's coalition was gathered. Grady peered through, then whistled softly. "How many people is that?" "Those are the crescent moons of Tyr," Perrin noted, pointing toward a banner. "And that's Ilion, camped on opposite sides of the field." A green banner set with 9 golden bees marked that army. "A large number of Kyrianan houses," Fail said, looking out off the rise. "Not a few Aiel. No Borderlander flags." "I've never seen so many troops in one place," Grady said. It's really happening, Perrin thought, heart thumping. The last battle. "Do you think there'll be enough to stop Rand?" Fail asked. "To help us keep him from breaking the seals?" "Help us?" Perrin asked. "You told Egwene that you'd go to the Field of Marilor," Fail said, "because of what Egwene had asked." "Oh, I told her I needed to be there," Perrin said. "But I never said I was going to take Egwene's side. I trust Rand, Fail, and it seems right to me that he'd need to break the seals. It's like making a sword. You usually don't want to forge one out of the pieces of a broken and ruined weapon. You get new good steel to make it. Rather than patch the old seals, you'll need to make new ones." "Perhaps," Fail said. "But this is going to be a fine line to walk. So many armies in one place. If some side with Rand and others with the White Tower, nobody would win if they turned against one another. Well, Perrin would have to make sure that didn't happen." The soldiers were already gathered in lines, preparing to march. Perrin turned to them. "Rand sent us away to search for an enemy," he bellowed. "We returned to him, having found allies. Onward, to the last battle." Only the ones at the front could hear him, but they cheered and passed the word back. Rand or Elaine would have given a far more inspiring speech. But Perrin wasn't them. He'd have to do things his way. "Aravine," Perrin called to the plump Amadisian, "go through and make sure that nobody fights over where to set up their camps." "Yes, Lord Golden Eyes." "Keep us away from the other armies for now," Perrin said, pointing. "Have Sulin and Gaul pick a good site. Pass the word to each of the armies as we set up. We're not to interact with or look the wrong way at any of those other forces. And don't let people go wandering off southward either. We're not in the wilderness anymore, and I don't want the local farmers complaining of mischief." "Yes, my lord," she said. He'd never asked Aravine why she didn't join one of the groups that had been sent back to Amadisia. It was probably because of the Seanchan, though. She was obviously noble, but didn't say much of her past. He was glad to have her. As his camp steward, she was his liaison between the various factions that made up his army. The Wolf Guard had drawn first lot, so they led the way through the gateway. The large column began to move. Perrin went down the line, giving orders, mostly reinforcing that he didn't want trouble with the locals or the other armies. He stopped as he met White Cloaks waiting their turn. Barrelane was riding next to Galad again. They seemed very amenably lost in conversation. Like but the woman had spent pretty much every waking hour with Galad these last few days. Perrin hadn't put the White Cloaks and Mayenners together, yet they seemed to have somehow ended up that way. As they started moving, Galad's White Cloaks rode in a perfect line, 4 across, their white tabards set with sunbursts. Perrin still had a gut reaction akin to panic whenever he saw them, but they'd made surprisingly little trouble since the trial. Mayenne's winged guard rode along the other side, Galen just behind Barrelane, their lances held high. Red streamers came from the lances, their breastplates and helms shined to perfection. It seemed they were ready to parade, and maybe they were. If you were going to ride to the last battle, you did it with lance held high and armor polished. Perrin continued on. Alejandro's army came next, riding in a tight formation of heavy cavalry, 8 men across, Arganda at their head. He called orders when he saw Perrin, and the serpentine column of soldiers turned and saluted. Perrin?
Alright, everyone. I'm going to call into this street for tonight. But I want to thank everyone for stopping by, everyone who keeps stopping by. Excuse me. Until next time, everyone. Y'all stay safe.